Thanks for joining me again. Once again, I'm Matthew Gage, pastor at Faith Baptist Church in Decatur, Texas, and this is our daily Bible study. We'll be in Genesis chapter number 4 this morning. And just to catch up and review a little bit here before we get started, we have seen the creation of the world in Genesis chapter 1, the creation of man, the Garden of Eden, chapter number 2, the fall of man, chapter number 3. And what we begin here is the exploits, I guess you could say, of fallen man now that they're out of the garden and the early human civilization. And we'll go through this here as we get through the first children and some of the first civilization here in Genesis chapter number 4. So let's just jump right on in. Genesis chapter number 4, verse number 1. And Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. Now I'll stop right there real quick. A couple things. The word Cain means something acquired, possessed, or taking possession of something. So when Eve names him, there's some significance there that she got something. Now, I'm going to point out too, I was thinking about this last night, that it says Adam knew Eve. Now, we saw the prophecy back in Genesis 3:15 that talked about the seed of the woman. Well, this proves that he's not that promised Redeemer because he is of the seed of Adam. So I thought that was interesting as I was looking at this, that definitely this, he could not be the promised Redeemer. Verse number 2, she again bare his brother Abel, and Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of ground. I told you what Cain meant. Abel just means vapor, from what I understand. Not really sure the significance of that, but there you go. And we see here the first details, the different personality, different professions of these two men. Abel is a herdsman, and Cain is a farmer. So we have the two differing professions, and that's going to bear out verse number 3. In the process of time, it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. And Abel, he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering. But unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. A couple things here to note. One is that there was a set time, it appears, that they were to offer offerings, and there seems to have been some expectation. I think that's kind of what we saw there at the end of chapter number 3, that there was some sort of expectation set, regulations of some sort of what God expected from these sacrifices. Cain does not offer what God expects. God is expecting a blood sacrifice, and Abel offers the proper sacrifice. Why does Cain offer the wrong sacrifice? Well, I think it goes back to his works. He's a farmer by trade. So what he's doing is offering his best work. Well, God doesn't want our best work. God wants what he expects. So in this case, he has offered the improper sacrifice, and God has rejected it. Verse number 6. And the Lord said unto Cain, Why art thou wroth, and why is thy countenance fallen? Once again, God's asking questions here he knows the answer to. Verse number 7, God explains a little bit. If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? So if you do what you're supposed to do, we won't have this problem. And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door. So the problem is sin, of course. The last part of verse number 7 is a little confusing. And unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. I think this is probably dealing with Abel being the younger brother and the primacy of the firstborn in the ancient culture. So I think that's what that is talking about, that is if you would do well, and even if you don't do well, that Abel is not usurping your place. Verse 8, And Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass, when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and slew him. So the first human-on-human murder. A lot of people say it's the first murder. I don't think it's the first murder. I would put that at the feet of Satan back in chapter number 3 of the fall of man. And it wasn't just one man, it was an entire race, the human race, that was murdered. And the instrument was sin at the hands of Satan. Verse number 9, the Lord said unto Cain, Where is Abel thy brother? Another question God knows, but he wants Cain to fess up. And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? A little phrase that's still around and used quite a bit in society, even still today. And he said, that's God speaking, verse number 10, what hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. And now art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be in the earth. So God's taken away the pride of Cain. You notice there's the stuff talking about the earth and talking about the produce of the earth. That God's saying you're not going to be a productive farmer anymore with the curse that is on him. He's just going to have to be an outcast because of his sin. He can't stay there near Eden with Adam and Eve and their other children. Verse 13, Cain said unto the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid. And I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth, and it shall come to pass that everyone that findeth me shall slay me. So Cain says, this is horrible. This is too hard for me to bear. And he's saying that, I'm afraid for somebody taking vengeance, that somebody is going to seek justice for the murder of Abel, and they're going to come after me. They're going to kill me. They're going to slay me. God does show some mercy to him, verse 15. And the Lord said unto him, therefore whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. Now, that mark, what is that? I've heard speculation, different things. I think probably some type of a birthmark kind of looking thing on him. It readily identified him, which, think about that. Now Cain can't even hide from his sin. He can't go out and hide, blend in with the crowd and be anonymous because he has this mark and everybody will know it. Now, I'll make one comment on that. I do not believe, and there's a theory out there, I do not believe this has anything to do with skin color. I don't like that, the trail of thought on that at all. So I just want to get that out of the way. I don't think this is the origin of people with different color skin, that people are white and he's black or something along those lines. I don't believe that at all is hinted at here. Verse 16, Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch. And he builded a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. A few different things here to point out real quick. This is not the more famous Enoch. We'll get to him later. Also, you note here he's building a city. This is the first case of someone building a city, of the people congregating, populating in one condensed area. I don't know how much of that was ever in God's original plan for this. There appears to be more, in my mind reading, I think man was intended more of an agricultural, agrarian type existence. So you can already see Cain is drifting off, I think, from the plan that God had of the perfect plan that he had created for mankind. Verse 18, and we give a few names here I'm going to slaughter. And unto Enoch was born Irad, and Irad begat Mehajiel, and Mehajiel begat Methusael, and Methusael begat Lamech. Verse number 19, Lamech took unto him two wives. The name of the one was Ada, and the name of the other Zillah. So here we go. Now we're getting down to just a few generations later, and now we see another deviation from God's original plan. God originally planned one man, one woman for marriage, for the basis of family, for the basis of society. And here we have Lamech taking two wives. So here is, like I say, I think you can follow down this as Cain is turned away from God, he's driven from the presence of the Lord. His line is continually drifting away from God. And you see the evidence here. Nadab bare Jabal, verse 20, and he was the father of such as dwell in tents and of such as have cattle. And his brother's name was Jubal, and he was the father of all such as handle the harp and organ. And Zillah, she also bare Tubal-Cain, an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron, and the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. Now, pause right here for a second. These different origins, like I said, Genesis is the book of origins. So we have these different lifestyles and skills. We see some of these people being the first ones to do, or the first great name in these skills or lifestyles or vocations. Well, I want to point out here that especially verse 22 talks about brass and iron, talks about metallurgy, and some people have the impression that mankind, starts very dumb, very animal-like, cavemen, and then they slowly progress to become the intellectuals that we are now. Scripture does not teach that. We see Adam as a very intelligent being from the very beginning, and here we have something that blows up a lot of the evolutionary timeline and the anthropologic timeline that's out there, where they'll say, oh, there was a Stone Age, and then there was a Bronze Age, and an Iron Age. Well, here we have metallurgy from the very beginning. So I think that blows up some of the man-made theories on history. Verse 23, this is kind of an odd thing here of everything in here. I'm not sure I wrap my head around this very well, but I'm going to try my best. Verse 23, and Lamech said unto his wives, Adah and Zillah, hear my voice, ye wives of Lamech. Hearken unto my speech, for I have slain a man to my wounding, and a young man to my hurt. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold. What is he talking about? Well, of course, he's hearkening back to the vengeance that was upon Cain, that if someone hurt him, they would be avenged sevenfold. And now he's saying, I've done something far worse, and so I should be avenged so much worse. What is the meaning of all this? I'm not really sure exactly, to tell you the truth, and I've seen a few different theories on it, but I think the safest, most general interpretation of this is like I was saying, I think it's a continual drifting away from God. That mankind started out so close, but they keep drifting away, and I think this is another symptom of how far they are drifting. With that in mind, and you see that drift away from God, well, what about the people, coming in, staying true? Well, Abel is dead, the righteous of the two brothers, and so God's going to start a new line through Adam and Eve, and we see that in verse number 25. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son, and called his name Seth. For God said she, this is Eve talking here, for God hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. The word Seth there means appointed. So she's saying, God stepped in, God's providence and God's provision. He started a new line. And verse 26 says, and to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos. Then began men to call upon the name of the Lord. So with this new righteous line, their influence of their lifestyle, of their obedience to God, of perhaps even their preaching, their example, there is a turning back to God. There's a counteraction to the sinful declension, I think that's a word, that we saw in Cain's line. And by the way, when you get to the New Testament and you look at the genealogy of Christ, whose line does he come from? He doesn't come from Cain, doesn't come from Abel. Abel was dead, of course. He comes through Seth's line. So it's very important that God started this new line. All right, well, that wraps up chapter 1. Quick thing I'm going to just address very quickly. Like I said, I'm trying my best to keep these fairly short, and I'm failing at my original goal so far of keeping these closer to 5 or 10 minutes, but we're getting 15-minute range on most of them so far. I mean, we're only 4 in. But I want to address one thing. Some people say, well, where did Cain get his wife? Where did Seth get his wife? Where did these people come from? Were there more people? I don't believe there were more people. The Bible is very clear that Adam and Eve were created, so were first. They were the humans. There's no other humans. So who did Cain and Seth marry? I do believe that they likely married their sisters. I think that's really the only explanation that's there. And from a biological standpoint, genetic standpoint, there's no problems with the inbreeding of lines and genetics and things with that, because it's still so high up there. So I believe that they married their sisters. And then as we go down further away, then you'll start seeing that, then they're marrying cousins. They're, in those lines of marriage and those unions become further and further apart. So anyway, that's just something that always comes up. The critics and people are just curious. People say, well, who did Cain marry? Who did Seth marry? Well, that's the obvious answer. So something we wouldn't do in today's world, we would look down on, but you think right here, it's a very different world. So, all right. Well, anyway, appreciate y'all watching, and we'll get into chapter 5 next time. Once again, thank you for watching. I hope it's been a help and a blessing to you.